And I do appreciate the comments. I appreciate the amendment, rise in support of it. Um, and we also say that as a graduate of Texas A&M, I'm a big fan of the University of Alabama. I think they're just terrific. Uh, with that said, um, I know as a child growing up in Texas, we heard constantly about the need to stop all drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, that it was going to destroy all the fishing, that it would destroy the fish, the aquatic life in the Gulf of Mexico. We just had to stop the drilling. Years later, we come to find out that just as Mr. Westerman and Mr. Carl have indicated, uh, those drilling rigs became extremely attractive for fishermen because the fish were increasing. They loved the drilling rigs as habitat. And in fact, last I checked, there were several years of delay, a list of places that wanted old drilling rigs to be discarded in different parts of the Gulf of Mexico to help with recreating fishing and fish in that area because it is habitat. Turns out they love it. I know there's this uh, line of thinking that says, gee, if man's involved, then it's terrible for nature. But those of us that have national forests know if man goes in and cleans the underbrush, creates fire lanes, you don't have as big a problem with forest fires once they get started. And they're easier to put out. They don't go as far. Same with fishing, unless you have someone like we had some years back, British Petroleum. We had hearings and had learned that there were nearly 800 egregious safety violations that British Petroleum had out on the Deepwater horizon, whereas other similar rigs uh, had maybe 1 to 10. They had nearly 800. There was some thinking at the time that probably the reason the Obama administration did not go after BP was that, in fact, the day the Deepwater Horizon blew out, that they were in they had representatives from BP in a senator's office named John Kerry, working out when they would come out in support of the administration's cap and trade carbon tax program. They were going to be the first big oil company to do that. So some of us felt like they got favorable treatment because of that. And they should never have been allowed to continue drilling with the kind of violations they had. Uh, but I was very upset when Deepwater Horizon blew out. I was upset with British Petroleum, and I started near the center of Louisiana. I had a video camera. I was going to record the terrible destruction to the beaches along Louisiana and Florida, all the oil washing ashore that had to be from the Deepwater Horizon. And everywhere I went, I said to the locals, "Where's the oil?" And they said, "Oh, you need to go about 10 miles further east." And I went for over 200 miles because that was the area where the damage was supposed to be being done by Deepwater Horizon. And there never was anything worth filming anywhere, but constantly go east, and about 10 miles, that's where the real damage was. And it was extraordinary with the efforts that were made uh, to stop the oil, to soak up the oil, to get rid of the oil, including the natural response, kind of like in California, where there's so much oil seeping out naturally that the ocean seems to just dissipate despite how much keeps seeping out. So, man can make a difference. Sometimes what happens naturally is not always best for Earth. especially when you got a volcano that can put out 1,000 years of CFCs. Um, you know, it's kind of tough to compete with nature and some of the destructive damage there, but drilling rigs, pipelines can be very helpful to the fishing population. And that's why I am grateful for the Graves Amendment and Mr. Carl's efforts on behalf of the amendment. And I would encourage people, this is something that is not a terrible thing. It's very helpful. We just have to make sure that we don't have other violations like we had with Deepwater Horizon that went unpunished and undealt with. But I think it's a good amendment and I support it and I encourage everybody else to. But I don't
Gentlemen,
know who that distinguished professor looking guy is. Oh, looks like from California. How about that? That beard looks quite distinctive. But I
gentlemen,
time.
anyone else wish to be recognized on Graves